Welcome to Java with John, MAISA's new webinar that connects Michigan's ISD leaders over a virtual cup of coffee. I'm your host, John Severson, and on today's episode, we sit down with Michelle Goaley. We're going to talk about ELPL. We're going to talk about early literacy professional learning with the project director, and we're going to hear her conversation, her voice to talk about what's happening in Michigan today. So before we get started with our guests, I want to remind all of our listeners, our mission is to empower ISDs as champions of student success and public education, which ties directly into today's discussion about work and the impact of MAISA's early literacy professional learning, ELPL, another acronym, right? So if you're new to your role, we're here to support you as you navigate the new school year and many responsibilities. Today offers a unique chance to learn from an experienced educator committed to achieving the best educational outcomes for all of Michigan students. So we welcome you today. So tell us, Michelle, about your educational and professional journey. How did you get here today, and what does our association mean to you?
Well, thank you, John. This is so exciting. I'm really happy that that I'm able to be part of the conversation and tell the story of the literacy work we're doing for MAISA for students across the state. I started my career, I'd say about 26 years ago in an elementary classroom. I taught third grade, and I was a teacher that looped. So I had third grade students and took them to fourth grade with me. And was able to really spend the first few years of my career just being able to explore and experiment teaching practices and really get to know, what literacy could look like in the classroom, that long ago. Then I took a position in a new district as a kindergarten teacher. And to be quite honest, teaching third and fourth grade for those years prior to being in kindergarten, you don't know what you don't know until you're in a classroom of 34 and 5-year-olds who come to you just ready to learn everything, like from how to sit on the carpet to how to tie their shoes, right? So it was a little humbling having gone from like a experience where I had the same kids for 2 years and we really could get into curriculum and then going down to kindergarten. But I did learn so much about how kids learn to read by having those kindergarten students. And that really kind of propelled me into the love of literacy even more, knowing just how many gains you could make in that early time with kids. So I went from that role into an instructional coaching position in literacy. So, really spent a lot of time. I did a lot of training, any professional learning I could do. I spent, some time with the Orton Gillingham work and really learning about how students learn to read and decoding and the phonics instruction, and was able to spend 3 years as an instructional coach in that district. Did some really good things with teachers and loved that work. Loved the work so much that one building in particular that I was working with had a vacancy with their principal. So I interviewed for that job and moved over into that role. And to be able to be an instructional leader as a building principal at that time was so huge. Like, walking in the door, having been side by side with those teachers as their coach, they already knew that instructional capacity was there. And then being able to organize the system in which they were working was really a blessing. So time as a building principal, then, same district, went up into the role of curriculum director. So was able to build some systems across all of the elementary buildings, the middle school and the high school, and spent 3 years in that role, working very closely with Bay Area ISD. And then a door opened there, and I was able to go to the position of assistant director of instructional services for a year, and then move into the director position. So after 7 years there and heavily being involved with MAISA networks, the project director position was just something that it was an awesome opportunity for me after kind of that culmination of all the work that I had done. So that's what brought me to where I am now.
Well, I'm so impressed with, hearing your background and through it all, I'm seeing that you have such an understanding of the system because you've been a part of so much of the system. But I think for our listeners, it's really important for them to know that when we get to work with Michelle, we know she's a teacher by heart, and that everything that she is doing within a system is to recognize, how does this get down to the classroom level? How do you work shoulder to shoulder with teachers and lift them up in this process with these very important strategies that will impact learning? And I think you being a teacher and going through these many stages allows you to have that connection, which is so critical. So let me ask you a question. So can you describe your work in this ELPL space and share what early literacy looks like in Michigan and the history and support of MAISA in that work?
Yes, and I think it might be helpful if I kind of take a step back and I'm thinking about when I was at Bay Aranac ISD as a director of general education, director of instruction. The networks that I had access to through MAISA really are what got me into the system around early literacy and how we could be able to build and scale up work across the state. So when I say that, I was a GELN member back in 2017, 2018, right after the literacy essentials were completed and released. And so I got to see firsthand the significant impact that 10 research-based strategies with the in-depth learning that was being provided around those strategies from the researchers themselves. It really was career changing for me to be able to see like we could all speak a common language across the state. And it didn't matter what curriculum you had, what resources you had, you knew that these 10 essentials were the framework of what research shows that will move the needle for students. And so it kind of gave us that common language in order to be able to enact a lot of the things that we may have been missing or hadn't been done maybe with fidelity in the past. So having that time at Bay Aranac as I kind of say like a consumer of the work, like I saw it happening at GELN, and then I got to take it and bring it to my context, which led to, we've got one literacy coach. The funding was much smaller at that point. So we had one coach at our ISD. What are we going to do? We've got, 6 districts and 2 PSAs, over 15,000 students, through Bay Aranac. What are we going to do with one coach? How are we going to do this? And we've got these great practices. So we were able to start thinking very creatively about how we could provide coaching cycles in elementary buildings where their staff was ready and excited about that work. So we took one coach and spent 6 to 8 weeks in each of those elementary buildings, kind of giving them a taste of what does coaching actually mean. And we focused around one of those 10 essential practices. And I'd like to kind of give a little shout out to Kyle Mayer, who was a part of GELN at that time, who had invited colleagues to come to the west side of the state, experience some of the Reading Now Network work that was happening. And in doing that, I was participating in instructional rounds with him. And I thought, oh, this is the perfect way. We've only got one coach. We don't know where to start. But if we can get into that building and do some instructional rounds and see what themes are emerging and then align them to the essentials, then that coaching cycle in that building can really be impactful. And so we did that for a full year. I think we got through 6 or 7 different buildings that year. And it immediately, there was an ask for more. It was like, that was so great. And it changed practice for us, but it was not nearly enough, Michelle. We need more. So then as funding increased in the system, we were able to increase our capacity to provide that coaching support. And we soon heard from our locals that, well, I'll even pony up some funds. We've got, at-risk funding that we could use to help support coaching, or title funding we could use, or even general funds. So then we were able to scale up over the 7 years I was there to 6 ISD coaches. And we had one district that invested in their own coaches per elementary building. So we had another 7 coaches in that district. So just like looking at that system and how it grew over time, without GELN and the Early Literacy Task Force, as a new director in that position, I would have never had the exposure or the opportunity to think out of the box on how to use that one coach to begin to scale up a system that was really going to be impactful. So I think that's kind of like my entry point into this, the ELPL work, and why I'm so passionate and excited about it is I saw with the creativity and the support of others what we could accomplish just at Bay Aranac, and thought, oh, gosh, we could scale this in a better way, in a bigger way.
And I think the interesting thing here too is that while you're describing Bay Aranac, this evolution has been across the state of Michigan. That now in your new role, you're seeing these things being done across the state. Reading Now Network is in one area, but there are other areas that they're doing very unique things. And I believe GLN has been a good sounding board to talk about what is happening in the state. There's quite a bit of work now with training elementary principals and understanding the essentials. We have letters that's coming in and people being trained in letters. And I think a big part is, as the system has evolved, we can see where there are areas where best practices have been lifted and increased, and more work done in fidelity. I know that's kind of a catchphrase in education, but I think part of that has happened because of this environment where people are learning together. Wouldn't you say that has been a positive impact of just the systems, but also GLN and other groups that have come together, focused on how do we do even a better job in Michigan supporting teachers and students across the state?
Oh, absolutely. I think just having the experience of having lived it and tried to navigate all of the challenges to several different districts who are, trying to implement anything to improve literacy scores has shown me the potential of what could happen anywhere. And so now it's really that opportunity to say, I might not know your area, rural, urban, but I know systems, and how could we use the tools that we have in order to best service and support what could happen with an instructional leader as a principal, what could happen with deprivatizing practice and getting into each other's classrooms to see what does small group instruction look like, or an engaging phonics lesson, and really being able to go through that idea of, if we trained our staff in letters, just a phenomenal training that aligns beautifully to the essentials, then what does it look like in practice? We can't just have that training live in that virtual world in the evenings of teachers' lives. We have to see what that looks like coming, to fruition in a classroom, and still engaging students and within the whole system. So it's really just provided this opportunity, this position, and this role to kind of get into different spaces and help problem solve and build systems that really have a better chance of making that positive impact on the literacy achievement that we want to see across the state. And I really wanted to, kind of elaborate on your mention of like our support for principals. So, we really have this great, I want to call it a initiative of Literacy Leader Network that we support through our ELPL work. And it's really a wraparound support from taking that building leader and helping them develop their capacity as an instructional leader, and taking it all the way through the system to how does that tie in with my kit? How does that tie in with the PA 146 requirements that are coming, with our IRIP plans? What do we do with our cycles of inquiry that can give us short bursts of success that will kind of get us to the next place in our learning journey as a team? And the organizational practices help to frame that for districts. And so, it's like we don't just focus on literacy, because in isolation, it's not going to get us where we need to go. It's that bigger picture of the whole system. And I think that's what is such a gift for the MAISA work, is that, we can see a through line in everything we do, which, really provides the state of Michigan such an asset, to help support the work that's happening.
And, I remember this work starting in 2015, and I see the evolution of how there are so many more pieces. And you talked about connecting to MyKIP, the strategy bank. We now have coaching. We're able to monitor what the coaching looks like. We're putting more and more of these pieces together. It's so important to stay the course and keep evolving in this process. I think sometimes our listeners will say, well, let's get right to the point of it. How is this impacting our kids? What is the literacy impact on our students? I know you saw some things at Bay Area, but maybe you could talk a little bit about Bay Area, but what you're seeing from the coaching data that was collected this last year, and how it's starting to show some amazing work that's taking, not just amazing work, but amazing results with kids in their ability to increase their literacy, understandings, rates, testing, whatever we want to call it. I still think, striving to ensure all kids can read at grade level. And I would also say that they enjoy reading, so we know how that builds all the way through. So talk a little bit about that impact of literacy coaching on kids, and what you're seeing, say, pre-kindergarten through grade 5.
So it really starts with the idea that we have this captive audience of literacy coaches through the 35A4 funded coaches, right? So part of their responsibility is to attend and participate in the events that our ELPL team puts on. And so we have over 500 coaches. Some are funded, but some ISDs have even expanded that invitation to district level coaches. So we've got really a nice opportunity through the quarterly meetings to provide that professional learning to those coaches. And in doing that, we've been training those coaches how to do coaching cycles that will make an impact in classrooms for literacy achievement of students. So what data is a coach sitting down with a teacher to identify is going to be the student outcome data that shows that the work is making an improvement, and how to adjust instruction. The closest data to the classroom is what we're looking for in the coaching world, because that's what I can side by side, coach to teacher, be able to impact, is that work that's happening right in front of us in that coaching cycle. So over the past year, we've coordinated a scaled up effort. So for the past 4 years, coaches have been able to submit these coaching cycle reports to MAISA with the support of Dr. Lallier, who's one of our researchers. And so we've gone through those reports and helped to provide kind of summary data of what's happening. But this past year, we had a commitment from every ISD to submit data. And so that was without a mandate to do so. That was all of our ISDs saying, coaching is working and it's important to us, and we want to be part of the story that's being told. So as we collected all of that data and we looked at the past year's reports, we were able to kind of quantify what that looks like. So in classrooms where coaching cycles are occurring, where their reports are submitted, we saw 73 to 75% of students meeting or exceeding expectations.
Wow, that's amazing.
And in classrooms where we were focused on teacher practice, so as the landscape of education has led us to teachers who may or may not be coming out with equipped to teach literacy or are taking an alternate path to certification. We know coaches are also working with teachers who need to increase practice. So we collected coaching cycle data around that as well. And again, it was about 75% of teachers who engaged with coaches that we saw meeting or exceeding those expectations set for teacher practice improving. Wow. So we are really seeing some great data come out when it's data that's relevant to the coaching cycle and the closest to the classroom. What we want to be able to see is how that is impacting our state in our MSTEP scores and our third grade reading scores and beyond, right? So we are working on how we can really take and look at where the system is ideal and the conditions are present for coaching to be successful. How did those schools do on MSTEP third grade literacy scores? What does it look like for them? And how can we replicate some of that work across the state with initiatives like LLN and some of the other things that we're doing? So,
well, and I want to say something real quick. You can see people are passionate about this work when they're willing to turn in the data without being, mandated in legislation. I mean, you have people that believe that we're having a positive impact, and they're showing the data that demonstrates that, right? And and that's really important for our listeners to know that this came from a number of our leaders across the state saying, we want to start telling our story, and we're going to tell it even with the data piece. I've read a lot of the surveys where many of our teachers and coaches feel so positive about this work and how it's built so many relationships and really provided very strategic professional development. And some are unaware that many of our college prep courses don't always include the essentials. Some universities are starting to incorporate some of that in their work, but I really feel that giving teachers the very best support and a continuation of that creates a true professional learning community where people are really open to learn and grow together. And that data really is a testimony to all of that positive work in the state. So I want to pivot to a question I have is, you talked a little bit about our system. There are a number of early literacy programs, standards, services. We have EduPass. We have some of these pieces, modules. Could you talk a little bit about how those things have been created, knowing that some districts it's hard for someone to get right away with a coach, or they're brand new, or they're learning, or they want to go back and revisit? Can you talk about some of those services that MAISA has designed with so many researchers and partners to ensure we're supporting teachers in real time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on our website, literacyessentials.org, you can find all the resources that have been developed over the past 10 years. And it's important to know that we are on top of the research and the latest research. So we do updates to our essentials based on the most recent research that's come out. So our K-3 essentials were updated in October of 2023, and we're just completing the last round of work on our grades 4 and 5 essentials. And so those will be updated and published by the end of this year. So I would be looking forward to the new version available on our website in December. Along with that suite of essentials, we have been shifting our modules from Michigan Virtual into EduPaths. They are much easier to access and have been updated as well. So the K-3 are all updated, and 4-5 are in development as soon as those updates are complete. There are coaching modules in there that align with the MDE coaching model and the coaching practices that we have out there and available. There are modules for the organizational practices. Those are really what I believe should be the starting point of the work of a principal or a district leader, to think about those organizational practices and say, do we have leadership teams in place that are focused on instruction? And if not, what can we do to really get those in place? and build that system so that as our teachers are being trained in best practices, we can see what that looks like in a building throughout. So it's not just, one first grade classroom, you're getting one kind of instruction, and across the hall, you're getting a different kind of instruction. It's giving the professional learning and those opportunities, but also aligning them to what the commitments are of the building with an instructional leader utilizing those organizational practices. So really kind of bringing it all together. And then we also offer some really good opportunities for learning outside of just coaching in bigger picture pieces around the systems work. So we've got sessions on learning labs and instructional rounds. Right now, we're in a 2-part series for developing a literacy framework. So that's really taking the essentials and putting it into practice using the resource in which your district has committed to. So defining, how much time you're spending in each area, what are tight expectations for that curricular resource, what might be more flexible under teacher discretion, to get to that place of coherence. So first grade classrooms are providing the same learning environment, no matter which teacher they have. So that's been really well received. We have a leader series happening with a few of our people at MAISA that is also helping to support those instructional leaders. And really our coaching supports that we provide through the quarterly network are wonderful opportunities for coaches across the state.
So I think of professional learning community. You cannot generate all of these supports, one or two people. This is a community, and I would say there are probably hundreds of people who have worked in this space to build what we have today, right?
Absolutely.
So I think to all of those who have been part of any of this work, we so appreciate what you've brought to the table, how you've transformed professional development in this area of literacy, and it's critical that our listeners know that this has taken time. This has been really vetted by so many, and there's so many ways to onboard new people, or if you're a veteran teacher and you want to learn, we welcome you. We welcome everyone to this table. I look at this as a part of the system that's being built. And I know in a future episode, we're going to talk about the data lake that we're building at the same time, which would work in real time and utilize artificial intelligence. But that's for another day. So I'm going to go to our next question that I have for you. I talked a little bit about how we built this system. I want you to talk a little bit about the importance of partnerships, collaboration, and, how do we work with our partners to fulfill this work?
Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of go back to that thought of the ISDs and how our ISDs really are the first line of support for what our partnerships look like. The ISDs are receiving the coaching allocations, and they have the power and autonomy to work with their local districts to really think about how to maximize the impact of coaching in their setting. So really, that those conversations with ISDs, us supporting them through the professional learning, GELN as our guiding group, our Gen Ed Leadership Network, and saying prioritizing what we need to do through our early literacy task force and our ELPL work. So that's really important. That coaching cycle data collection would not be happening if GELN didn't strongly believe in this work and the coaching support, that it's making a positive impact. So, that's really helping us to kind of bring the work together and think about what scaling looks like. I also love to, just share a little bit about our partnership with MDE. We have a few literacy consultants from MDE who are active part of our early literacy task force. And so they help in planning what content is shared with coaches, which is so important, thinking about PA 146 and, all of the shifts that might be happening in districts. There's support there and investment of MDE in the work we do. The fact that all of our coaches are trained in letters, either in process or have finished. I think it's important to note the professional learning that a literacy coach in the state of Michigan gets is profound. They are the literacy expert. They have the foundation of learning from the 10 essentials and the modules, the layering of that deep learning that letters provides them, along with thinking about the systems work that they're able to participate in and the learning they get from that and from our annual institute and our quarterly meetings. So really those partnerships make that possible. Having the voices of ISDs and MDE and other partners across the state really helps to develop the skill set of the coaches and the system in which they work as well. We also, that with the PA 146 piece, I really wanted to be able to mention the dyslexia work group that's been kind of part of GELN, a subset of GELN, that's been able to help think through what implementation looks like of this legislation. So that partnership and having an active voice within that work group has just been awesome.
Yes, and I will say, to our listeners, SELN, our Special Ed Education Network, MEDAL, our technology folks, they're also involved in this because they're looking at tools and they're looking from who's being trained in those areas to have a greater understanding. I believe the PA 146, the dyslexia work is critical. We get that right. We work together to provide the very best guidance supports. And I know that there's been a subgroup of numerous ISD leaders in this area that have worked with us to really design a guidance tool to come alongside those students who need more support. And I think about, we've talked a lot about our system, teachers. Talk a little bit, just quickly about, what are we doing with families in our community? I mean, our families are so key in all of this work, right? What are we doing in that regard? And what do you see maybe even for the future to continue to grow that piece of this work?
On our website, we have supports that are companion documents to our essentials work, and specifically in the area of family engagement. You think about the birth to 3 space and the pre-K space. We have some really good tools that support families that are available publicly. So please, I'd encourage people to share and check those out. We also, over the past year and previous years, have had a partnership with the Michigan Learning Channel. And so one of our ELPL coordinators has heavily been involved in that work and partnered with the 35I team on family engagement. We just this fall had a really successful event with that team as the audience. So looking at what Michigan Learning Channel has to offer, their work is so closely aligned to the essentials, and the essentials are embedded in that work. So that is all really a good opportunity for engagement as well. Plus, the organizational practices help us think about where we are as districts individually with family and community engagement and how we might be able to support the development of the system at the district level through that lens of organizational practices.
Yeah, and I know the Michigan Learning Channel has been a phenomenal partner, and I would even say that there's so many other connectors in this. MyLeap is connected to us more and more.
Yes.
MEMSPA, the elementary principals have just been phenomenal as we develop the support for the principal, the instructional leader of a building. There's so many pieces. So I want to make sure we do a shout out to everybody who's been a part of this, from researchers to teachers who've given us amazing feedback, to very creative and innovative leaders who have come alongside with new ideas. I think part of this too is the new superintendents, new ISD superintendents. There's new superintendents in the LEAs, principals. I think our aspect of leaders, how we come alongside is we really connect with our GLN and our gen ed director, our special ed director, and have, focused conversations about, are we collecting the right data? Do we have a commitment? Have we really leaned into the space? Are we learning from our partners in neighboring ISDs, neighboring districts? Are we using our strategy bank? Are we building it to the MyKIP? Just give us your last thoughts about that statement about new superintendents and anything else you'd want to share about what we've talked about today.
Mhm. I think I'd say, in thinking about coming into a system, that partnership between the superintendent, and I can give, either lens, an ISD or a local, the partnership between your lead instructional person and your superintendent is so important. And so the advocacy of the work comes from both ends. So knowing that there's a commitment to the essentials and data collection. So we want to ask the question, like, how do we know coaching is working in our ISD? How do we know coaching is working in our district? And if it's not a clear path to the answer, then what systems level work do we need to do to get to that data? That oftentimes means that we need to get the coach out of the ISD into a district in a coaching cycle that's intentional. And so how are we going to do that? Thinking through that with the ISD and the partnership with the local districts that ISD serves. I had one GELN director that said this to me, and it's something I say over and over, is like, make it easy to say yes. Right? Yes. Right. So think about that in the terms of coaching support. So saying, we're going to provide you a coach in your building for a 6-week coaching cycle, and we're just going to ask that you allow us to collect some data around what that looks like. Come on in the door, right? We want you. We would love that. And so just thinking about, how do we build those systems that get at answering the question, how do we know coaching is working in our setting?
Well, Michelle, I thank you so much for joining us and sharing this work and your passion. And we know that literacy is so critical in our state, and we need to come together. And I really feel out of all this, I heard, some key phrases, systems, tools, partnerships, but it's all going to come down to relationships, right? And where people feel comfortable reaching out for help. So to all our members and our listeners, Michelle Goaley is phenomenal. She's amazing. She's always ready to help and serve, and you can reach out to her. So thank you, Michelle, for joining us again, talking about ELPL. We so appreciate you. So, and to all our guests today, if you have any questions, an idea for a topic, or if you'd like to be a guest, email me at javawajan@gomaisa.org. And don't forget, visit our website, gomaisa.org. All the things we talked about, you can access them there and explore our resources and stay connected. So, to all of our guests, thank you for being here. And until next time, keep leading and serving with vision and passion. And remember, we are better together. Thank you.